Growing up, my parents made me go to Sunday school every day. I had perfect attendance for going to Sunday school. And the only thing I really remember about that is not liking to be forced to go to Sunday school. The only thing I remember learning about God and Jesus was the fact that God was a punishing God. So what I did, if I did something wrong, I was going to be punished for it. And if I did enough things wrong, I believe that there was no hope. There was no way to get out of that deep hole that I had put myself into.
At some point, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I began making bad choices. I had to switch from the Christian school that I knew, with the handful of kids that went there, to a public school that was large, and I knew no one, and I had no friends. It was very hard for me. I was alone, I was scared, I didn't know what to do, and all I wanted to do was fit in. This was the beginning of a very dark path for me.
I had alcoholism, dealing with that in my life. It cost me dearly. It cost me dearly in my life. It cost me 2 marriages. I lost 2 marriages through that turmoil of my life. I got into doing drugs and selling drugs, and it was a very, very dark time in my life.
I began to not get along with my parents. I was angry. I was bitter that I was in the situation I was in. I became friends with the only kids that would accept me, giving out my homework, doing whatever I could to fit in, to be accepted. At one point, my parents sought to get me counseling, and they brought in a pastor who my mother later told me had said that I was a lost cause.
I lost a 14-year-old son. God took him from me, and I say that, but it really caused me a lot of anger towards God. What did I went back to resorted back to that old days when a punishing God. What did I do wrong for God to take my son away from me? He was a good kid, and for the longest time I had a lot of anger about that.
I felt hopeless. I began making choice after choice after choice that I didn't really want to make, but I didn't really care anymore either. I was full of despair, and nothing I could do seemed to be good enough for my parents. At one point we came to an impasse, and they said go, and I said okay. And I haven't lived at home since. I was full of despair, doubting God, and at every turn in the road, it seemed to make the wrong choice. I graduated from high school and went to college. I moved to Denver because I wanted to be as far away from home as possible, but within reach still. I got pregnant shortly after heading to college and didn't want to be alone with no family or anything, but I didn't want to go back home. I still had a rebellious heart, and so I moved to Omaha. There I gave birth to my amazing son, and shortly thereafter found myself homeless. At that point I moved into the Salvation Army in their homeless shelter and got pregnant again. I went through their transitional housing program, but I still wasn't ready to surrender to Christ. I called my dad and asked him what to do. He told me that a friend of ours had become a pastor in Gretna, and so in desperation I began driving from North Omaha to Gretna every Sunday to go to church, thinking that maybe I would find the answers there. I am eternally grateful for a woman there who took the time and the energy to invest in me and to draw me back to Christ, even though I wasn't quite ready to bend my knee and admit that I had totally screwed up my life. She devoted everything she had to letting me know of Christ's love for me and His forgiveness and His acceptance.
Moving on through our seasons in life, we moved to Ashland, and And shortly after that, we started, my family started going to Riverview, and eventually I woke up and started coming to Riverview, and during that time, I still harbored that anger towards God, and I was able to sit down with Neil and discuss that and get that over with, and it really cleared the path for me to let Jesus into my heart.
She spent countless hours talking with me, listening to me, telling me how much Christ loved me and how much he could redeem my past. I finally realized that I had completely messed up my life. It was at a point that I never ever thought it would be. But when I was ready, she was there, and I surrendered my life to Christ again.
I learned at that point in my life that God wasn't a punishing God. My God actually I had the ability to forgive, have my sins forgotten. And I knew that God was a loving God. He loved me, and it was a really turning point in my life, having God in my life instead of that alcohol and drugs and those things.
It was not easy, and I can never say enough to say how Christ delivered me from my past and from all the choices that I had made, and how he brought me out of the darkness into the light. I have learned to find my worth and value in Christ. I am the daughter of a king. I am fully forgiven, completely loved, and redeemed by the blood of Christ.
And I found out that I needed to change. There was a lot of things about my life about myself that I needed to improve on, and I started working on that. And today I don't dwell on those negative things. God still throws crazy stuff at me. Day-to-day life. I still have arguments with my wife, disagreements with my wife, and things like that. But it's stuff that we get past very quickly. Turn it over to God. I don't have the worries that I used to have. I don't have the drink to survive.
I am learning to let go of my expectations of perfection and live in the freedom that Christ has offered me. I love what C.S. Lewis says. Life with God is not immunity from difficulty, but peace in the difficulties.
Having Jesus in my heart, my life has become so much easier and more enjoyable. I have a really good relationship with my wife. I have a really good relationship with my kids. I now have a really good relationship with my sisters and my parents. And I've got a lot of really good friends here at Riverview, and it's really, really opened up a lot in my life.